Here's your fame, hunter of married women.
The fog rolled in from the Atlantic like it always does in Millfield, Maine. Thick enough to hide secrets, thin enough to let them slip through. I stood in my garage, wrench in hand, watching the rust-colored Honda Civic drip oil onto the concrete floor. Same car I'd been fixing for Mrs. Patterson for 3 years running. Same leak, same excuse about money being tight. "Ethan, you listening?" Paul's voice cut through my thoughts. My best friend leaned against the workbench, beer in hand, despite it being barely noon. "I said your wife's back in town." "Yeah?" I wiped my hands on the rag hanging from my belt. "Good for her." Paul raised an eyebrow. He'd been tending bar at Murphy's for 15 years, which meant he could read people like a drunk reading last call. "That's it? No excitement about Lana coming home from her big Miami adventure?" I shrugged. The truth was I'd spent the last 4 days not thinking about where Lana had gone or what she'd done. Girls' trip, she'd called it. Her and Megan, her best friend since college, living it up in South Beach, while I kept the garage running and tried not to wonder why she'd blocked my number. "She said she'd call when she landed," I said, turning back to the Honda. "Haven't heard anything yet." That was a lie. I'd heard plenty, just not from Lana. See, funny thing about blocking someone's phone number, it doesn't block everything. Especially when you share an iPad and your wife forgets to log out of her iCloud account. Especially when she forgets that photos sync automatically across devices. I'd seen enough of Lana's Miami trip to know it wasn't just her and Megan getting drunk on mojitos and complaining about their husbands. There was a third party in those photos, male, tan, fond of taking his shirt off and posing like he was auditioning for a cologne commercial. The guy's name was Josh Dalton, according to the tags in Lana's photos. JD, she called him in her messages. He worked at her tech startup, some kind of sales hotshot who drove a red BMW and thought wearing his sunglasses indoors made him look mysterious. I'd also heard the voice messages Lana had sent to Megan during their last night in Miami. Drunk, giggly, detailed messages about how JD is so much better than Ethan in bed and how she was finally living her best life. And how Ethan will never know because he's too stupid to figure it out. That last part stung a little. Not because it hurt my feelings. I got over hurt feelings around the time I realized my wife thought mechanics were too dumb to understand technology. It stung because it was such a tactical error on her part. Never underestimate the guy who fixes your car, Lana. We notice everything that's broken. Earth to Ethan. Paul snapped his fingers. "You're doing that thing again." "What thing?" "That thing where you stare off into space and I can practically hear the gears turning in your head. Usually means someone's about to have a very bad day." I grinned. Paul knew me well. We'd grown up together in Millfield, gotten into trouble together, learned to drink together at Murphy's bar when we were barely old enough to drive. He'd watched me work through plenty of problems over the years, mechanical and otherwise. "Just thinking about timing belts," I said. "Sure you are." Paul finished his beer and tossed the bottle in the recycling bin. "Listen, I gotta get back to the bar. Lunch crowd's starting to pick up. But if you need to talk, I know where to find you." After Paul left, I walked over to the workbench and picked up my phone. No missed calls, no text messages, just a notification from the Find My Friends app that I'd installed on our shared iPad months ago, back when Lana started working late, and I wanted to make sure she was safe. According to the app, Lana was currently at Logan Airport in Boston. Her flight had landed 20 minutes ago. I opened my contacts and scrolled to her number. Still blocked. That was fine. I had other ways to communicate. I opened the Messages app and started typing a text to Megan. "Hey, it's Ethan. Using Lana's old tablet. Can you tell her I'm running late to pick her up? Car trouble. Should be there in an hour." I hit send and waited. 3 minutes later, Megan replied, "Sure thing. She's grabbing her bags now. See you soon." Perfect. That gave me an hour to prepare. I locked up the garage and walked across the street to Murphy's bar. Paul was behind the counter, polishing glasses and chatting with Joe Henley, one of the local fishermen who always smelled like bait and bad decisions. "Back already?" Paul asked. "Need a favor." I slid onto a bar stool. "Can you give me a ride to Boston? Logan Airport." "Sure. What's wrong with your truck?" "Nothing. I just want to arrive in style." Paul studied my face for a long moment. Then he grinned. "This should be interesting. Let me grab my keys." The drive to Boston took 45 minutes. Paul's Chevy Silverado wasn't much to look at, but it ran smooth and had a good sound system. We listened to classic rock and didn't talk much. Paul knew I was working through something, and he knew better than to push. Logan Airport was chaos as usual. Cars everywhere, people hauling suitcases, taxi drivers yelling at each other in 3 different languages. I had Paul drop me off at the departure curb and told him I'd catch a ride home with Lana. "You sure about that?" he asked. "Positive." I found Lana at baggage claim, standing next to the carousel in a white sundress that showed off her tan. She looked good. I had to give her that. 4 days in Miami had done wonders for her complexion, if not for her marriage. She was checking her phone when I walked up behind her. "Looking for someone?" She spun around, surprised. "Ethan, you scared me. I thought you were running late." Changed my mind. Decided to surprise you instead. Lana smiled, but something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or just annoyance that her phone was still blocked and she couldn't check her messages. "That's sweet. I missed you." "Did you?" I reached for her suitcase as it came around the carousel. "How was the trip?" "Amazing. Miami is incredible. You should see the beaches, Ethan. So much nicer than Maine." "I bet. Meet anyone interesting?" Another flicker. "Just the usual tourist crowd. You know how it is." I nodded and started walking toward the exit. Lana hurried to keep up, her heels clicking on the polished floor. "So what did you do while I was gone?" she asked. "The usual. Fixed cars. Hung out with Paul. Caught up on some reading." "Reading? Since when do you read?" "Since I got curious about cloud storage and data synchronization. Fascinating stuff, really. Did you know that when you take photos on your phone, they automatically upload to every device connected to your Apple ID?" Lana stopped walking. "What?" I turned around and smiled. "Technology, Lana. It's everywhere these days. Even us dumb mechanics have to keep up." Her face went pale under her Miami tan. "Ethan, I can explain." "No need. I saw everything I needed to see. JD looks like a fun guy, very photogenic." For a moment, I thought she might deny it, make up some story about meeting him at the hotel bar, or claim he was just a friend, or try to gaslight me into thinking I'd misunderstood what I'd seen. Instead, she went on the attack. "You spied on me?" "I didn't have to. You left everything wide open. Photos, messages, location data. It was like reading the morning paper." "Those were private. Not when you sync them to our shared devices, they're not." We were standing in the middle of Logan Airport having this conversation, and people were starting to stare. Lana noticed too. She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward a quieter corner near the restrooms. "Look," she said, lowering her voice. "It just happened, okay? JD and I worked together, and there's been this attraction for months, and when Megan suggested Miami, you decided to act on it. It doesn't mean anything, Ethan. It was just physical." I almost laughed. After 12 years of marriage, that was the best she could do. It was just physical? "Here's the thing, Lana," I said. "I don't really care about the physical part. Bodies are just bodies. What bothers me is the lying, the blocking my number, the you don't need to know what happens on a girl's trip attitude. I was trying to protect you." "From what? The truth? From getting hurt?" Now I did laugh. Too late for that. Lana's expression changed. The defensive anger melted away, replaced by something that looked almost like panic. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing," I said. "Yet." I walked away, leaving her standing by the restrooms with her suitcase and her guilt. I could have made a scene right there in the airport. Could have shouted about her affair, embarrassed her in front of strangers, maybe even called JD and told him exactly what I thought of men who sleep with other people's wives. But that would have been emotional, messy, unsatisfying. I had bigger plans. The taxi ride back to Millfield gave me time to think. 45 minutes of coastal highway and small towns, watching the landscape change from urban sprawl to pine forests to rocky shoreline. This was my territory, my home turf. Lana might have the advantage in Miami, but here in Maine, I knew every road, every person, every secret. By the time we pulled into my driveway, I had the beginnings of a plan. Our house sat on Elm Street, a tree-lined road 3 blocks from downtown Millfield. It was a Victorian-era place, painted yellow with white trim, complete with a wraparound porch and a view of the harbor. We'd bought it 5 years ago, back when Lana still pretended to like small-town life, and I still believe she meant it when she said she loved me. I paid the taxi driver and walked up the front steps. The key stuck in the lock. It always did when the weather was damp, but eventually turned. Inside, the house felt empty and hollow. Lana wouldn't be home for another hour, maybe longer if she decided to stop somewhere and figure out her next move. I went upstairs to our bedroom and opened her laptop. She'd left it logged in, probably by accident. Or maybe she'd gotten so used to having privacy that she'd forgotten to cover her tracks. Her email was full of messages from JD Romantic, explicit and completely incriminating. I scrolled through weeks of correspondence, watching their relationship develop from flirtatious office banter to full-blown emotional affair to physical consummation in Miami. The man was an idiot. He'd written everything down, saved every photo, documented every step of their relationship like he was keeping a diary. There were details about their lunch dates, their after-work drinks, their weekend text sessions while I was working at the garage. He'd even sent her links to apartments in Portland, suggesting she might want to leave Millfield and move closer to the city, closer to him. I took screenshots of the most damaging messages and emailed them to myself. Then I cleared the browser history and closed the laptop. Evidence gathered, plan forming. My phone buzzed. A text from Lana. Taking a cab home. Need time to think. I texted back. Take all the time you need. While I waited, I called Paul. How'd it go at the airport? He asked. Educational. Listen, I need another favor. You still know those kids who hang around the pier? The ones who are always looking for quick cash? Yeah, Billy Thompson and his crew. Why? I might have some work for them. Nothing illegal, just some light maltreatment. Pranks, mostly. Paul was quiet for a moment. This is about Lana, isn't it? Maybe. Ethan, I've known you since we were kids. When you get that tone in your voice, people end up regretting their life choices. Only the people who make bad life choices. What do you need? I told him. Paul listened without interrupting, occasionally grunting approval or asking for clarification. By the time I finished, he was chuckling. That's either brilliant or completely insane, he said. Can it be both? When do you want to start? Tomorrow. Tonight I play the grieving husband. Let Lana think she's in control of the situation. And then we see how much JD likes having his photo taken. Lana came home around 8 o'clock, looking tired and defeated. She found me in the kitchen, heating up leftover pizza and drinking a beer. We need to talk, she said. Do we? Ethan, please. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I turned around and leaned against the counter. How hard does it have to be? I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But we can work through this. Can we? People make mistakes. Marriages survive affairs all the time. Is that what this was? A mistake? Lana hesitated. Yes. Funny. From the emails I read, it seemed pretty deliberate. Weeks of planning, hotel reservations, detailed discussions about your future together. Her face flushed. You read my emails? You left your laptop open. I was curious about your trip. Those emails are private. So was our marriage. Didn't stop you from inviting JD into it. We stared at each other across the kitchen. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much damage she could contain. It was the same look she got when she was working through a problem at the office, methodical and strategic. What do you want from me? She asked finally. Honestly, nothing. I want you to go upstairs, pack your things, and leave. This is my house too. Actually, it's not. Check the deed. My name only. I bought it with money from my father's life insurance policy, remember? You said you didn't want the financial responsibility. Another calculation, another flicker of panic. You can't just throw me out. Watch me. I walked past her toward the stairs. You've got until tomorrow morning. After that, I'm changing the locks. I left her standing in the kitchen and went up to our bedroom. From the window, I could see the harbor, dark water reflecting the lights from the boats. Somewhere out there in the fog, fishermen were setting their traps and checking their lines, doing honest work for honest pay. Tomorrow, I'd start my own kind of fishing. Lana didn't leave that night. I heard her moving around downstairs, making phone calls, probably talking to Megan or her mother or maybe even JD. I didn't care. Let her strategize. Let her make plans. I had plans too. I woke up before dawn, showered, and drove to the garage. Millfield was quiet at 6 in the morning, just the occasional pickup truck heading to the docks and the smell of coffee drifting from Rosie's diner. I unlocked the garage and got to work on Mrs. Patterson's Honda, trying to clear my head before the day officially began. Paul showed up around 7 with coffee and donuts. Sleep well? He asked. Like a baby with trust issues and access to power tools. Speaking of which, I talked to Billy Thompson. He and his friends are very interested in your proposal, especially the part about easy money and minimal risk. Perfect. Phase 1 starts today. What's phase 1? I wiped my hands and reached for the coffee. Public embarrassment, JD drives a red BMW, right? Works at TechFlow Solutions on Commercial Street. Parks in the lot behind the building, same spot every day. How do you know all that? I did some research. Amazing what you can find on social media when people don't bother with privacy settings. Paul grinned. This is going to be fun. Around 10 o'clock. J.D. quote. SBMW was decorated with a dozen rolls of plastic wrap, 3 cans of silly string, and a large sign that read, "I love married women," taped to the windshield. Billy Thompson and his crew did excellent work, and they documented everything with their phones. By lunchtime, the photos were all over social media. TechFlow Solutions had a decent-sized staff, and most of them followed each other on Instagram and Facebook. The images spread quickly, along with speculation about what JD had done to deserve such treatment. I was fixing a transmission when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Josh. We need to talk." I showed the message to Paul, who was helping me wrestle with a particularly stubborn gear assembly. "He found your number," Paul said. "Apparently. Should I respond?" "Definitely, but not right away. Let him sweat a little." I waited 2 hours before texting back. "Murphy's Bar, 6 p.m., come alone." His response was immediate. "I'll be there." Murphy's Bar sat on Main Street, wedged between a used bookstore and a shop that sold nautical-themed home decor to tourists. It was a local institution, the kind of place where fishermen drank beer after long days on the water and mechanics unwound after wrestling with broken engines. The walls were covered with old photographs of Millfield, back when it was a working fishing village instead of a quaint coastal town that attracted summer people from Boston. JD arrived exactly at 6, looking nervous and overdressed in his khakis and polo shirt. I was sitting at the bar, nursing a beer and talking to Paul about the Red Sox. Several of the regulars were there, too. Joe Henley, Mike Santos from the marina, a couple of guys from the construction crew working on the new hotel. All good people, all friends of mine, all curious about the stranger in the expensive clothes. JD spotted me and walked over, trying to look confident. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe late 20s, with the kind of gym-built physique that looked good in photographs, but probably wouldn't hold up well in a real fight. "Ethan?" He extended his hand. "Josh Dalton." I didn't shake it. "I know who you are." He lowered his hand and glanced around the bar. The conversation had died down, and I could feel people listening without making it obvious. "Can we talk somewhere private?" "This is private enough. What's on your mind, JT?" His jaw tightened. "Look, I know you're upset, and I understand why. But vandalizing my car isn't going to solve anything." Vandalism is a strong word. I'd call it community service, public art. A few of the regulars chuckled. J.D. quote, S-face flushed. "This is between you and me," he said. "Leave my property out of it." "Interesting perspective. What about my property?" "Your property?" "My wife, remember her? Lana, about 5'6", blonde hair, married to me for 12 years? The bar had gone completely quiet now. Even Paul had stopped pretending to wash glasses. "That's different," JD said. "How?" "She's not your property. She's a person. She makes her own choices." "You're right. She is a person. A person who chose to lie to her husband, sneak around behind his back and block his phone number so she could spend 4 days in Miami with her coworker." JD glanced around again, clearly uncomfortable with the audience. "Can we please discuss this somewhere else?" "Why? Afraid people might find out what kind of man you are?" "I'm not afraid of anything." "Really? Then you won't mind if I share some of those photos from your trip. The ones Lana sent to Megan. Very artistic. You have a good eye for lighting." His face went pale. "You wouldn't. Wouldn't I?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my photos until I found the screenshots I'd taken from Lana's messages. J.D. quote. S eyes widened as he recognized the images. "Those are private," he whispered. "Were private. Now they're evidence." "Evidence of what?" "Depends. What are you willing to do to keep them private?" JD stared at me for a long moment. I could see him thinking, calculating, trying to figure out what I wanted. Around us, the bar remained silent. Even the jukebox had stopped playing. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Simple. Stop seeing my wife. It's not that easy." "Why not?" "Because she loves me." The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt something shift in my chest, a cold anger that settled in my bones and spread through my bloodstream. "She told you that, did she?" "Yes." "And you believed her?" "Of course." I laughed. Actually laughed, loud enough that several people turned to look. JD, let me tell you something about Lana. She's told 3 different men she loved them in the past 5 years. I know because I've read her messages. There was her personal trainer, her boss before you, and some guy she met at a conference in Portland. You're not special, you're just convenient. His confidence cracked a little. You're lying. Am I? Ask her about David Kim from the Portland conference. Or better yet, ask her about the messages she sent to Megan last week, complaining about how clingy you've become. JD opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stop texting her, calling her, emailing her. If you see her at work, you'll be polite but distant. Professional. And if I don't, I held up my phone. Then everyone in Millfield gets to see exactly what you look like without clothes. And trust me, the lighting in those hotel room photos is not flattering. JD stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out of the bar without another word. The silence lasted about 10 seconds before conversation resumed. Paul slid another beer across the bar. That went well, he said. Phase 1 complete. What's phase 2? I smiled. Depends on what Lana does next. What Lana did next was predictable. She called me around 10 o'clock that night, furious and defensive. JD told me what happened at the bar, she said without preamble. Did he mention the part where he tried to shake my hand? Very civilized. You can't threaten him, Ethan. It's maltreatment. I didn't threaten anyone. I simply explained the consequences of certain actions. Those photos are private. So was our marriage. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, I want to come home. The locks have been changed. You can't do that. Already did. Took about 20 minutes. Amazing what you can accomplish when you're not busy having affairs. Ethan, please, we can work through this. I made a mistake, but it's over now. Is it? Because according to JD, you love him. That doesn't sound very over to me. Another silence. He told you that? He seemed quite confident about it. Said you'd chosen him over me. That's not... It's complicated. No, Lana, it's simple. You cheated. You lied. You got caught. Now you're trying to manage the fallout. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. I hung up and turned off my phone. Let her figure it out. She had friends, family, co-workers. She had JD, who supposedly loved her enough to risk his career and reputation. Let him help her now. I slept better that night than I had in months. No tossing and turning, no lying awake, wondering why my wife had been distant lately, no nagging feeling that something was wrong in my marriage. Everything was wrong, but at least now I knew what I was dealing with. The next morning brought rain and the first real challenge to my plan. I was opening the garage when Megan pulled up in her white Subaru, engine knocking like a machine tool. Ethan. She climbed out of the car, looking frazzled and desperate. Thank God you're here. My car started making this noise on the highway, and I don't know what to do. Megan Walsh was Lana's best friend, a marketing coordinator at a furniture store who lived in a condo near the marina. She was pretty in an obvious way. Highlighted hair, expensive clothes, always perfectly made up, even at 8 in the morning. She was also the one who'd suggested the Miami trip, who'd helped Lana plan her affair, who'd covered for her with lies and excuses. Pop the hood, I said. The engine was a mess. Blown gasket, cracked hoses, oil leaking from at least 3 different places. It would take a week to fix properly and cost more than the car was worth. How bad is it? Megan asked. Bad. Expensive. Her face fell. I just had it inspected last month. They said everything was fine. Who inspected it? Quick Lube on Route 1. I nodded. Quick Lube was notorious for rubber stamping inspections without actually checking anything. Half the cars I worked on had passed their inspections with problems that should have failed them immediately. I can fix it, I said, but it'll take time and money. Probably more than you want to spend. I need my car, Ethan. I can't get to work without it. There's a bus that runs from downtown to the mall. Catches it right outside Murphy's at 7:30. The bus? Seriously? I shrugged. Your choice. Fix the car or take the bus. Megan bit her lip, calculating. I could see her thinking about her budget, her pride, her options. How much to fix it? $2,000, maybe more. Jesus, I don't have that kind of money. Then I guess you're taking the bus. She stared at me for a long moment. This is because of Lana, isn't it? What's because of Lana? You're being a pecker because you're mad at her. I put down my wrench and looked at her directly. Megan, I'm being a mechanic because you have a broken car. If you want me to fix it, I'll fix it. If you want to take it somewhere else, that's fine too. But don't accuse me of mixing business with personal feelings. You know I helped plan the Miami trip. I know lots of things. Lana needed to get away. She's been unhappy for years, Ethan. You just didn't notice. Or maybe she's been lying for years and I finally figured it out. Megan's expression hardened. You don't deserve her. Apparently not. JD does, according to everyone involved. JD treats her like a queen. Is that what you call sleeping with someone else's wife? Royal treatment? He loves her, I laughed. Funny, that's exactly what he said. Did you all rehearse that line, or does it just come naturally? Megan turned and got back in her car. The engine knocked and wheezed as she started it, but it ran. Barely. I'm taking it to Portland, she said through the rolled-down window. Someone there will actually fix it without being an a-hole. Good luck with that. She drove away, trailing blue smoke and righteous indignation. I watched her go, then pulled out my phone and sent a text to Billy Thompson. Phase 2 begins now. Remember what we discussed. The response came back immediately. On it. Megan made it about 2 miles before her car died completely. Billy and his friends just happened to be driving by when it happened, and they were kind enough to offer her a ride back to town. They were also kind enough to document the whole thing on their phones, including Megan's increasingly creative vocabulary as she realized her car wasn't going to start again. By lunchtime, the video was all over social media. Megan Walsh, Lana Rourke's best friend, stranded on Route 1 in the rain, cursing like a sailor while teenage boys laughed in the background. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The real action began that afternoon when JD decided to take matters into his own hands. I was working on a brake job when I heard tires squealing in the parking lot outside. Through the window, I saw J.D. quote, S-Red BMW skid to a stop next to my pickup truck. He got out fast, looking angry and determined. Paul was with me, helping with the brake pads. This should be interesting, he said. JD burst through the garage door like he was staging a raid. We need to talk, now. I'm working. Make an appointment. I'm not making an appointment. You've crossed the line, Ethan. I looked up from the brake rotor I was cleaning. Which line was that? Megan's car. You sabotaged it. I diagnosed it. There's a difference. Bees, that car was running fine yesterday. Yesterday, it had oil in the engine. Today, it doesn't. Funny how that works. JD stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Expensive stuff, probably cost more than most people in Millfield made in a day. You think you're clever, don't you? Playing games, trying to humiliate people? I think I'm a mechanic fixing cars and minding my own business. Your business includes maltreating my girlfriend and her friends? I set down the rotor and stood up. JD was taller than me, but not by much, and he'd clearly never worked with his hands. His palms were soft, his nails clean, gym muscles and office conditioning. Girlfriend, I said. Interesting choice of words. What would you call her? My wife. Not for long. We'll see about that. We stared at each other for a moment. Behind me, I could hear Paul moving around, getting into position, in case things went sideways. Lana's filing for divorce, JD said. She's done with you. Done with this crappy little town. Done pretending to be someone she's not. And then what? She moves to Portland, gets an apartment near your office, plays house with a man who's young enough to be her little brother. She loves me. There it was again. That phrase. I was starting to think they'd written it on a greeting card. JD, I said, can I give you some free advice? Not interested. Too bad. Here it is anyway. When a married woman tells you she loves you, what she really means is that she loves the way you make her feel about herself. Young, attractive, desired. It's not about you. It's about her ego. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? How many times has she mentioned leaving her husband before this week? In all those months of lunches and drinks and secret messages, how often did she actually talk about building a future with you? JD hesitated. Just for a second, but long enough for me to know I'd hit a nerve. She needed time to figure things out, he said. Or she needed an excuse to keep stringing you along while she enjoyed the attention. Shut up. Ask her about David Kim, the conference in Portland. Ask her why she never mentioned him to you. I said shut up. JD took a swing at me, clumsy, telegraphed, the kind of punch that looked good in movies but had no real power behind it. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him past me. He stumbled, caught himself on the workbench and spun around with his face red and his perfect hair mussed. "You done?" I asked. He came at me again, this time trying to tackle me around the waist. I grabbed his shoulders and used his own momentum to spin him around, pushing him backward toward the open garage door. He lost his balance and sat down hard on the concrete, looking shocked and embarrassed. Paul appeared with a phone in his hand. "Should I call the cops, or are you boys finished playing?" JD scrambled to his feet, brushing dirt off his khakis. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," I said. "Go home. JD, take a shower, have a beer, think about your choices, and next time you decide to take a swing at someone, make sure you know how to throw a punch." He walked toward his BMW, moving like a man who just learned an uncomfortable truth about himself. The engine started with a purr that sounded expensive and hollow. Paul watched him drive away, then turned to me with a grin. "That was educational." "For who?" "Both of you, I think. He learned he can't fight, and you learned he's got a glass jaw. I already knew that. Anyone who sleeps with married women and calls it love has a glass jaw." We went back to work on the brake job, but my mind was elsewhere. J.D. quote. S visit had confirmed something I'd suspected. Lana was already making plans to leave, filing for divorce, according to him. That was fine. I'd expected it. What I hadn't expected was how predictable they all were. JD, Megan, Lana herself. They moved through their drama like actors following a script, hitting every cliche, making every obvious choice. It would make the next phase easier. My phone buzzed around 4 o'clock. A text from Lana. "JD told me what happened at your garage. We need to talk. I'm coming over." I showed the message to Paul. "Showtime." "You want me to stick around?" "Nah, this one I handle alone." Paul gathered his tools and headed for the door. "Call if you need backup." "Will do." Lana arrived 20 minutes later, driving a rental car. She parked next to the garage and sat behind the wheel for a full minute before getting out. When she finally emerged, she looked tired and older than her 34 years. "Hello, Ethan." "Lana." She glanced around the garage, taking in the familiar chaos of tools and parts and half-finished projects. "I always hated this place. I know. All that noise and grease and maleness, like a clubhouse for boys who never grew up." "Is that what you came here to tell me? That you hate my garage?" "I came to tell you that I'm filing for divorce." I nodded. JD mentioned that. "Congratulations." "Don't be sarcastic." "I'm not. I think it's a good idea. We should have done it years ago." That caught her off guard. She'd clearly prepared for anger, defensiveness, maybe even begging. She hadn't prepared for agreement. "You do?" "Absolutely. We're incompatible, Lana. Always have been. You want excitement, adventure, passion. I want honesty, loyalty, stability, oil and water. Then why are you making this so difficult?" "Am I? I thought I was making it easy. You want out of the marriage, JD wants in your pants, everyone gets what they want." "Stop talking about him like that." "Like what?" "Like he's some kind of hunter. JD is a good man. If you say so." "He is. He's successful, ambitious, considerate. He listens when I talk. He remembers things that are important to me. He makes me feel special." "Sounds perfect. You should marry him." "Maybe I will." "Good for you." We stared at each other across the garage. I could see her frustration building, the irritation of someone who wasn't getting the reaction she'd expected. "Aren't you going to fight for me?" she asked finally. "Why would I do that?" "Because we're married, because we have history together, because we built a life together. We built a house together. Life is different." "I can't believe you're being so cold about this." I wiped my hands on a shop rag and leaned against the workbench. "Lana, what exactly did you expect? That I'd fall to my knees and beg you to stay? Promise to change, to be more exciting, to become someone I'm not? I expected you to care." "I do care. I care enough to let you go." "That's not caring. That's giving up." "No," I said. Giving up would have been pretending I didn't know about JD, letting you continue the affair while lying to my face, slowly destroying what was left of our marriage. This is honesty. Lana's eyes filled with tears. Real ones, as far as I could tell. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? I don't know, differently, more romantic. I almost laughed again. "You wanted romance? In divorce?" "I wanted you to care enough to fight for me, even if we both knew it was over." "That's not romance, Lana. That's theater." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup slightly. "You're not the man I married. Neither are you the woman I married. People change. Sometimes they grow apart. Sometimes they find out they were never really together in the first place. So that's it? 12 years, and you're just going to let me walk away? I'm not letting you do anything. You already made your choice. I'm just not going to stand in your way. Lana nodded slowly, like she was finally understanding something she'd been struggling with. The locks on the house will be changed back once the divorce is final and we figure out the property settlement. My things are in storage. Unit 47 at Coastal Storage on Harbor Road. I paid 3 months in advance. You packed my things? Seemed like the practical thing to do. She stared at me for another long moment. I never knew you could be so cruel. This isn't cruel, Lana. Cruel would be making you live with the consequences of your choices while pretending everything was fine. Cruel would be dragging this out, making everyone miserable for months while we fought over details. Maybe I want to fight? Then fight with your lawyer. I've already called mine. That seemed to deflate her completely. She slumped against her rental car, looking lost and confused. Where am I supposed to go tonight? That's between you and JD. He lives with roommates. There's no privacy. Motel 6 is clean and affordable, or there's that new bed and breakfast on Maple Street if you want something more upscale. You really don't care, do you? I considered the question seriously. Did I care? About Lana, about our marriage, about the life we'd built together? I care about you being happy, I said finally. I care about you finding what you're looking for, even if it's not with me. But I don't care about managing your feelings or solving your problems anymore. That's not my job now. Lana got back in her rental car without another word. She started the engine and sat there for a moment, maybe hoping I'd change my mind, maybe just gathering her thoughts. Then she drove away, leaving me alone in my garage with the smell of motor oil and the sound of waves breaking against the harbor. Phase 2 complete. The next few days passed quietly. I worked on cars, had dinner with Paul at Murphy's, watched the Red Sox lose to the Yankees in 11 innings. Normal life, except for the absence of marriage drama. Lana, according to Paul's sources, had taken a room at the Ocean View Inn on Harbor Road. JD was apparently spending most of his evenings there, which was causing some tension with his roommates. Megan had her car towed to Portland, where a mechanic quoted her $3,000 for repairs. Everything was going according to plan. Then on Friday afternoon, Karen Hayes showed up at my garage. Karen was Lana's boss at TechFlow Solutions, a woman in her 50s who'd built her career on being smarter and tougher than everyone around her. She drove a black Mercedes and wore suits that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. I'd met her a few times at company parties, back when Lana and I still pretended to be a happy couple. Karen had always struck me as someone who didn't suffer fools gladly and who saw right through people's BS. Mr. Rourke. She walked into my garage like she owned it. I hope you don't mind the interruption. Not at all. What can I do for you? I understand you're getting a divorce. Word travels fast in a small town, especially when it involves 2 of my employees. I set down the socket wrench I'd been using and gave her my full attention. 2, Lana and Josh. They seem to think their personal drama won't affect their professional responsibilities. And you disagree? I know it will. It always does. Office romances are disruptive under the best circumstances. Office romances involving infidelity and public humiliation are disasters. Sounds like a management challenge, Karen smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. Indeed, which is why I'm here. I'm not sure how I can help. You can help by sharing some information. I understand you have documentation of their relationship, photos, messages, that sort of thing. I studied her face. Karen Hayes didn't strike me as someone who made social calls or fished for gossip. She was here for a reason. What kind of documentation? The kind that would be useful in a termination hearing? Now I understood. Karen wanted evidence she could use to fire one or both of them, probably both, if she was smart. Office affairs were a liability nightmare for companies, especially when they involved maltreatment claims or discrimination lawsuits. Why would you want to terminate them? Because they're both idiots who think with their genitals instead of their brains, and I can't afford to have that kind of liability on my payroll. I had to respect her directness. Which one are you more interested in firing? Josh, primarily. He's replaceable. Lana has institutional knowledge that would be expensive to lose, but Josh is just another sales rep with an ego problem. And if I don't have any documentation, then I'll find another way, but this would be easier. I thought about it for a moment. JD had been nothing but trouble since this whole thing started. He'd slept with my wife, threatened me, tried to fight me in my own garage. Getting him fired would be poetic justice. On the other hand, getting him fired would also remove him from Lana's orbit, which might actually help their relationship. Martyrdom could be romantic under the right circumstances. I might have some photos, I said finally. Nothing too explicit, but enough to establish a pattern of behavior. That would be sufficient. What's in it for me? The satisfaction of watching Josh Dalton clean out his desk. Not enough. Karen raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? Information. I want to know about Lana's work performance, her future prospects at the company, any disciplinary issues she might have. Why? Divorce settlement. The more I know about her earning potential, the better I can protect my interests. Karen considered this. That's fair. What specifically do you want to know? Everything. Performance reviews, salary history, any complaints against her, any rumors about other relationships. Other relationships? You said office romances are always disruptive. This wasn't Josh's first time, was it? Karen's smile returned. No, it wasn't. 20 minutes later, I had a much clearer picture of my wife's professional life. Turns out Lana had a pattern of getting involved with male co-workers, usually men who were junior to her in the company hierarchy. Josh was the third in 2 years. There had been complaints from other female employees about favoritism and inappropriate behavior. Nothing that rose to the level of formal disciplinary action, but enough to create a hostile work environment. Karen had been looking for a reason to address the problem. My photos would give her the justification she needed. One more thing, Karen said as she prepared to leave. I understand Lana is planning to relocate to Portland. Is she? She submitted a request to transfer to our Portland office. It was denied. Why? Because the Portland office is being shut down. We're consolidating operations back to Millfield. When? Next month, which means if Lana moves to Portland, she'll be unemployed. Does she know this? Not yet. The announcement won't be made until next week. I watched Karen drive away in her Mercedes, thinking about timing and consequences. Lana was planning to leave Millfield, move to Portland, start a new life with JD. She probably thought she could transfer her job, maintain her income, have her cake, and eat it too. Instead, she was about to find out that running away from your problems doesn't solve them. It just creates new ones. Phase 3 was about to begin. The weekend brought the annual Millfield Harbor Festival, a tourist-friendly celebration that featured craft booths, live music, and enough fried food to eliminate a small whale. The whole town turned out for it, along with visitors from Portland and Boston who came for the quaint New England atmosphere. I usually avoided the festival. Too many people, too much noise, too much forced cheerfulness. But this year was different. This year, I had a reason to attend. JD and Lana were there, walking around like a real couple, holding hands and posing for selfies. They'd apparently decided to make their relationship public. Consequences be damned. They looked happy, young and carefree, and totally oblivious to the storm that was about to hit them. I found Paul working the beer booth, serving Sam Adams to tourists and lobster rolls to locals. Busy day, I said. Busiest yet. You see the lovebirds? Hard to miss them. They're putting on quite a show, very romantic. About that, I need another favor. Paul grinned. What kind of favor? I told him. Paul listened, asked a few clarifying questions, then nodded approval. When? During the band's break, maximum audience, maximum impact. You sure about this? Completely. This is going to end their relationship, you know. That's the idea. The band was a local group called Tidal Wave, 4 guys in their 40s, who played classic rock covers with more enthusiasm than skill. They'd been the festival's headliner for 3 years running, mainly because they worked cheap and knew how to get a crowd singing along. During their break, the festival organizers usually made announcements about upcoming events, thanked sponsors, that sort of thing. This year, they had a special presentation. Billy Thompson, wearing his best shirt and looking nervous, walked up to the microphone with a large poster board in his hands. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice cracking slightly, we'd like to thank everyone who came out to support the Harbor Festival, and we'd especially like to thank Josh Dalton and Lana Rourke for showing us what true love looks like. The crowd murmured, looking around for the people Billy had mentioned. JD and Lana were standing near the food trucks, clearly visible to everyone at the festival. Billy held up the poster board. It was a collage of photos from their Miami trip, enlarged and arranged in a heart shape. Beach photos, restaurant photos, hotel room photos. Nothing explicitly sexual, but intimate enough to tell the story. Josh and Lana spent last week in Miami getting to know each other better, Billy continued, reading from a script. They'd like everyone to know that their love is stronger than marriage vows, stronger than commitment, stronger than honesty. The crowd had gone silent. Even the seagulls seemed to have stopped squawking. So, let's give them a hand for following their hearts, even if it meant breaking someone else's. A few people started clapping, uncertainly. Others just stared. Most stood in shocked silence, processing what they'd just heard. JD and Lana were frozen near the food trucks, their faces pale with humiliation and shock. Around them, people were starting to point and whisper. Billy handed the microphone back to the festival organizer and walked away, leaving the poster board propped against the stage. The band members looked confused, but they started setting up for their next set. The damage was done. I watched from across the harbor park as JD and Lana tried to figure out how to respond. They could run, which would look guilty. They could stay and try to brazen it out, which would be futile. Or they could confront me, which would only make things worse. They chose option 3. Ethan? Lana's voice carried across the park. Ethan Rourke! People turned to look as she marched toward me, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. JD followed behind her, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. You son of a witch! Lana said when she reached me. How could you do this? Do what? Don't play dumb. That presentation, those photos. You're trying to humiliate us. I'm not trying to do anything. I'm succeeding at it. This is maltreatment. This is truth. Don't like how it looks? Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to document your affair on social media. JD stepped forward. You've made your point, Ethan. Enough. Have I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you two are still together, still playing house, still pretending that what you did was romantic instead of selfish. What we did is none of your business anymore, Lana said. Actually, it is. You're still my wife, technically. Until the divorce is final, your behavior reflects on me, and I don't appreciate being made to look like a fool. So you decided to make us look like fools instead? You did that yourselves. I just provided documentation. By now, we had an audience. Half the festival crowd was watching our confrontation, phones out, recording everything. This would be all over social media within the hour. You're pathetic, Lana said. A pathetic little man who can't handle the fact that his wife found someone better. Better? I looked at JD. Really? A guy who sleeps with married women and calls it love? A guy who throws punches like a 12-year-old girl? A guy who's about to be unemployed? J.D. quote. S face went pale. What are you talking about? Ask your boss on Monday, if you still have a job on Monday. You son of a witch! JD started toward me, but stopped when he realized how many people were watching. You can't do this. I already did. I'll sue you. For what? Telling the truth? Lana grabbed J.D. quote, S arm. Come on, let's get out of here. They walked away quickly, pushing through the crowd toward the parking area. Behind them, people were already pulling out their phones, sharing photos of the poster board, spreading the story across social media. Paul appeared at my elbow with 2 beers. Well, that was dramatic. Just getting started. What's next? Now we wait. Let them stew in their own juice for a while, see what they do next. And then we finish this. Monday morning brought the news I'd been expecting. JD was fired, effective immediately. Karen Hayes had used the photos I'd provided, along with several complaints from female employees, to build a termination case that was airtight. Lana wasn't fired, but she was placed on probation and transferred to a different department. No more HR responsibilities, no more access to personnel files, no more authority over other employees. The Portland office closure was announced the same day. Employees were given the option to relocate to Boston or stay in Millfield. There was no Portland option. By Tuesday, JD was packing his belongings and preparing to leave town. His roommates had asked him to move out, partly because of the drama and partly because he could no longer afford his share of the rent. By Wednesday, Lana was staying at the Ocean View Inn, alone. By Thursday, they were fighting in public. I was having lunch at Rosie's Diner when they had their final confrontation. The diner sat across the street from the town park, with big windows that offered a clear view of the gazebo, where local couples sometimes got married. JD and Lana were standing beside the gazebo, having what appeared to be a very heated discussion. Even through the glass, I could see that they were both upset. Trouble in paradise, said Joe Henley, who was sitting at the counter eating fish and chips. Looks like it, I agreed. Can't say I'm surprised. That boy never looked like he had much backbone. Through the window, I watched JD gesturing frantically while Lana stood with her arms crossed. She was shaking her head, looking disgusted. He was pleading, looking desperate. Then Lana turned and walked away. JD followed her for a few steps, calling her name, but she didn't turn around. She got in her rental car and drove off, leaving him standing alone in the park. "That's that then," Joe said. "Looks like it." JD left town on Friday. I heard about it from Paul, who heard about it from Billy Thompson, who'd seen JD loading boxes into his BMW behind the apartment complex. "Good riddance," Paul said. "Guy was nothing but trouble." "What about Lana?" "Still at the inn, as far as I know. Looking pretty miserable, according to Sarah, who works the front desk." You feeling sorry for her?" I thought about it. Did I feel sorry for Lana? She'd lost her lover, her job prospects, her friends, her reputation. She was alone in a small town where everyone knew her business, staying in a motel room and trying to figure out what came next. "No," I said finally, "I don't feel sorry for her." Cold. Realistic. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with them. What if she wants to come home? Home to what? The marriage is over, Paul. Has been for months, maybe years. This whole thing just forced us to admit it. And if she apologizes? Begs for forgiveness? Then I'll wish her well and hope she finds what she's looking for somewhere else. Paul nodded. You've changed, since all this started. How so? Harder, more calculating. Maybe I just stopped pretending that being nice to people who treat you badly is a virtue. Maybe. Or maybe you learned that revenge tastes better than you expected. I considered that. Did revenge taste good? The satisfaction of watching JD get fired, of seeing Lana's perfect life fall apart, of knowing that their affair had cost them everything they thought they wanted? It doesn't taste like anything, I said. It just feels like balance. Saturday brought the final act of my drama. Lana showed up at the garage around closing time, looking tired and defeated. She'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Hello, Ethan." "Lana, can we talk?" "We're talking. I mean really talk. About us, about what happened, about what comes next." I finished cleaning my hands and hung up my work shirt. What's there to talk about? I made a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake, but it's over now. JD is gone, I'm alone, and I'm asking for another chance. To do what? To fix our marriage, to make things right between us. I looked at her for a long moment. She was beautiful, even tired and desperate. We'd had good times together, especially in the early years. There had been love once upon a time. Maybe there still was, buried under all the anger and betrayal. "Lana," I said gently, "do you know why your marriage to me failed? Because I was selfish. Because I wanted excitement and adventure, and I forgot about what really mattered. No, it failed because we're incompatible. We want different things from life, and we always have. You want passion, drama, intensity. I want peace, honesty, stability. Neither of us is wrong, but we can't give each other what we need. We could try. We did try. For 12 years, it didn't work. Things could be different now. How? I've learned from my mistakes. I know what I almost lost. What did you almost lose? You, our life together, our home. Lana, you didn't almost lose those things. You did lose them. The moment you decided to have an affair, you threw them away. Everything that happened after that was just the consequences playing out." Tears started running down her cheeks. "So that's it? 12 years, and you won't even try to save our marriage?" "I can't save something that was already broken." "It wasn't broken. We had problems, but every marriage has problems." "Every marriage has problems. Not every marriage has affairs. One mistake doesn't have to destroy everything." "It wasn't one mistake, Lana. It was a series of choices. You chose to get involved with JD. You chose to lie to me about it. You chose to plan a trip to Miami with him. You chose to block my phone and tell me I didn't need to know what happened. Every step of the way, you had opportunities to stop, to be honest, to save our marriage. You chose not to. I was confused. I was unhappy. Then you should have talked to me about it, or gone to counseling, or asked for a separation. Instead, you decided to cheat. I never meant for it to go so far. But it did. And now we all have to live with the consequences." Lana wiped her eyes with a tissue. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Whatever you want. You're a free woman. Or you will be once the divorce is final. You can stay in Millfield, move to Portland, go back to school, start a new career. The world is full of possibilities. I can't afford to move to Portland, not without the transfer. Then stay here. Find a new job, rebuild your life, make new friends. Everyone in town knows what I did. They look at me like I'm some kind of pariah. That'll fade. Small towns have short memories for everything except really good gossip. How long? A year, maybe 2. Depends on whether someone else does something more interesting. Lana laughed bitterly. 2 years of being the town hoe. That's what I have to look forward to. You're not a hoe, Lana. You're just someone who made bad choices and got caught. It happens to everyone eventually. Not to you. No, not to me. We stood in silence for a moment, listening to the sound of waves against the harbor. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn sounded its warning to boats trying to navigate the rocky coast. I'm sorry, Lana said finally. For everything. For the affair, for the lies, for hurting you. I'm truly sorry. I know you are. Do you forgive me? I thought about it. Did I forgive her? Forgiveness was complicated. It meant letting go of anger, releasing the desire for revenge, choosing peace over justice. I forgive you, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. We can't go back to what we were. Why not? Because trust, once broken, can't be repaired. It can be replaced, but that takes time and work and commitment from both people. And honestly, Lana, I don't think either of us wants to do that work. I do. No, you don't. You want to go back to the way things were before you got caught. That's not the same thing. Lana stared at me for another long moment. Then she nodded, like she was finally understanding something she'd been fighting against. The divorce papers are already filed. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, but either way, it's happening. Easy way? We split everything fairly. We both walk away clean. We try to be civil for the sake of people who care about both of us. And the hard way? Lawyers, court battles, public documents detailing your affair, a lot of expense and ugliness for everyone involved. That sounds like a threat. It's not a threat. It's a choice. Your choice. Lana picked up her purse and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she stopped and turned back. You know what the funny thing is? She said. I actually thought JD loved me, right up until the end. I believed he would fight for me. What happened? When things got difficult, when his job was threatened and people started talking, he ran. Didn't even say goodbye properly. Just packed his stuff and left town like a coward. I'm sorry. Are you? I'm sorry you got hurt. I'm not sorry he's gone. Lana nodded. I suppose I deserved that. Nobody deserves to be hurt, Lana. But everybody deserves honesty. You chose excitement over honesty, and this is where it led. And you chose revenge over forgiveness. I chose consequences over enabling. There's a difference. Is there? Ask me in a year. If you're happier then than you were 6 months ago, then yes, there's a difference. Lana left without another word. I watched through the window as she got in her rental car and drove away. Probably back to the Ocean View Inn. Probably to another night of room service and cable television and wondering how her life had gotten so complicated. I locked up the garage and walked home to my empty house. It felt different now. Not lonely, exactly, but peaceful. Quiet. Free of the tension that had been building for months. I made myself dinner, watched the Red Sox beat the Orioles, and went to bed early. Tomorrow was Sunday, which meant sleeping late and reading the paper and maybe taking a drive along the coast. Normal life. Honest life. My life. 3 months later, the divorce was final. Lana had chosen the easy way, accepting a settlement that gave her half the value of the house and a modest monthly payment for 2 years. She found a job at a real estate office in Portland and rented a small apartment near the waterfront. We saw each other occasionally when she came back to Millfield to handle legal matters or visit old friends. The conversations were polite, distant, careful, like acquaintances who had once known each other better. JD never came back to town. According to rumors, he'd moved to Florida and was working for a software company. Megan had found a new best friend and rarely mentioned Lana anymore. The whole drama gradually faded into local history, replaced by newer scandals and fresher gossip. I kept working at the garage, fixing cars and listening to people's problems. Paul kept tending bar at Murphy's, serving beer and collecting stories. Life in Millfield went on, much as it always had. The house on Elm Street stayed empty for a while after the divorce. I considered selling it, but the market was slow and I wasn't in any hurry. Eventually, I started renovating it. New paint, updated kitchen, modern bathroom. Projects that kept my hands busy and my mind occupied. One evening in December, I was working on the plumbing in the upstairs bathroom when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hi, Ethan. This is Sarah from the inn. I know this might be weird, but would you like to have coffee sometime? Sarah Chen worked the front desk at the Ocean View Inn. I'd seen her around town for years, but had never really talked to her. She was quiet, bookish, the kind of person who noticed everything and said little. I thought about it for a moment. Coffee was harmless. Coffee was honest. Sure, I texted back. When? Tomorrow? Murphy's around 10? See you there. The next morning, I met Sarah at Murphy's. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a book and a cup of coffee. She looked nervous but determined. Thanks for coming, she said. Thanks for asking. We talked for an hour about books, about Millfield, about the challenges of running a small business in a tourist town. She was smart, funny, refreshingly direct. No games, no hidden agendas, no drama. When I walked her back to the inn, she stopped at the entrance and turned to me. I should probably mention, she said. I was working the front desk when Lana was staying here. I saw how miserable she was, how much she regretted what she'd done. I felt sorry for her. That's kind of you. But I also saw how you handled everything, how you didn't lose your temper or do anything cruel or violent, how you just let the truth speak for itself. The truth has a way of doing that. It does. And I wanted you to know that I respect that. I respect you. We had coffee again the following week, and the week after that. By spring, we were having dinner together regularly. By summer, she was spending weekends at the house on Elm Street. Sarah was different from Lana in every way that mattered. Where Lana was dramatic, Sarah was calm. Where Lana was demanding, Sarah was understanding. Where Lana was deceptive, Sarah was transparent. She read books instead of gossiping with friends. She cooked dinner instead of ordering takeout. She listened to my stories about work instead of complaining about her own problems. Most importantly, she was honest. About her feelings, her past, her hopes for the future. No games, no secrets, no blocking phone numbers. It was exactly what I hadn't known I was looking for. One evening in late fall, we were sitting on the porch of the Elm Street house, watching the sunset over the harbor. Sarah was reading a mystery novel, and I was working on a crossword puzzle. Ethan, she said without looking up from her book, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever feel guilty about what happened with Lana? I thought about it for a moment. It was a fair question, one I'd asked myself many times over the past year. No, I said finally. I don't feel guilty about exposing the truth, but I do feel sad about how it all ended. Sad how? Sad that 12 years came down to lies and betrayal. Sad that she threw away everything we'd built for someone who didn't really care about her. Sad that it took something so ugly to show us who we really were. Sarah nodded. I can understand that. What about you? Do you think I was too harsh? I think you did what you had to do. Some people only learn from consequences. And some people never learn at all. True, but that's not your responsibility anymore. She was right. Whatever Lana learned or didn't learn from her experience was her business now. I'd given her the truth, and she'd have to decide what to do with it. My phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it, expecting work or something routine. Instead, it was from Lana. Saw the engagement announcement in the Portland paper. Congratulations, Sarah seems lovely. I hope you're happy. I showed the text to Sarah, who smiled. How did she know? Small towns, news travels fast. Are you going to respond? I thought about it. Lana had reached out with what seemed like genuine good wishes. It would be churlish not to acknowledge that. Thank you, I texted back. I hope you're happy, too. Her response came quickly. I'm getting there, slowly but surely. I put the phone away and went back to my crossword puzzle. Sarah went back to her book. The sun continued its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Later that evening, after Sarah had gone home to her apartment above the bookstore, I walked down to the harbor. The fog was rolling in, thick and mysterious, carrying the smell of salt and seaweed and distant places. Murphy's bar was busy for a Tuesday night. I could hear laughter and conversation through the windows, the comfortable sound of people enjoying themselves without drama or complications. I thought about going in, having a beer with Paul, catching up on local gossip. Instead, I kept walking, following the harbor road out toward the lighthouse. The lighthouse had been automated years ago, but it still flashed its warning every few seconds. A steady, reliable beacon for ships trying to navigate the rocky coast in the darkness. I stood there for a while, watching the light sweep across the water, thinking about choices and consequences and the strange way life sometimes worked out. A year ago, I'd been a married man with a garage and a house, and what I thought was a stable life. I'd been wrong about the stability, but right about the garage and the house. And now I had something better than stability. I had honesty. The foghorn sounded its deep, mournful warning. Somewhere out there in the darkness, ships were making their way carefully toward safe harbor, guided by lights and signals and the accumulated wisdom of generations of sailors who'd learned to read the signs. I turned and walked back toward town, toward my house, toward my life. Tomorrow I'd work on cars and have lunch with Sarah, and maybe take her to dinner at that new Italian place on Harbor Street. Honest work, honest relationships, honest possibilities. It was exactly what I'd been looking for, even when I didn't know I was looking. Behind me, the lighthouse continued its steady warning to anyone who might be listening. Watch for the rocks, respect the fog, trust the lights that guide you safely home. Good advice for sailors. Good advice for everyone. 6 months later, Sarah and I were married in a simple ceremony at the Millfield Community Center. Paul was my best man, and Sarah's sister came up from Boston to stand with her. About 50 people attended. Friends, neighbors, regular customers from the garage and the inn. It was nothing like my first wedding, which had been a formal affair with 300 guests, an expensive reception, and enough flowers to stock a small greenhouse. This was smaller, simpler, more honest. No blocking phone numbers, no hidden agendas, no secrets that might explode months or years later. Just two people who'd found each other and decided to build something real together. Lana sent a card with a handwritten note. Wishing you both every happiness. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like. I appreciated the sentiment, though I wasn't sure she fully understood it yet. Real love wasn't just about passion and excitement. It was about showing up every day, telling the truth even when it was difficult, choosing your partner's well-being over your own convenience. It was about trust that didn't need to be constantly verified, communication that didn't require interpretation, and commitment that didn't waver when life got complicated. Sarah understood that. She'd learned it from watching her parents, who'd been married for 40 years and still held hands while walking down the street. The reception was held at Murphy's Bar, which Paul had decorated with white lights and small bouquets of wildflowers. The food was simple: lobster rolls, clam chowder, blueberry pie from Rosie's Diner. The music came from Billy Thompson and his friends, who'd learned to play acoustic guitars instead of causing trouble. During the dancing, Sarah pulled me aside for a private moment. "Any regrets?" she asked. "About what?" "About how we got here. About what happened with Lana." I thought about it. Did I regret the pain and drama of the past year? The public humiliation, the bitter confrontations, the ugly end to a 12-year marriage? No regrets, I said. Everything that happened brought us to this moment. I wouldn't change any of it. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. They taught me what I really wanted. And what's that? This, you, a life built on truth instead of pretense. Sarah smiled and kissed me right there in front of everyone. A simple, honest kiss that tasted like blueberry pie and possibility. Around us, our friends and neighbors raised their glasses in a toast, to new beginnings, to second chances, to the strange and wonderful ways that life sometimes rewarded patience and honesty. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the decorations had been taken down, Sarah and I sat on the porch of our house now officially, and watched the harbor. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we live our lives. Fix cars, run the inn, maybe take that trip to Ireland you've been talking about." Sounds perfect. Boring, you mean? Boring is underrated. I've had enough excitement to last a lifetime. Me too. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the waves and the distant sound of foghorns. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, new opportunities to choose honesty over convenience. But tonight was perfect exactly as it was. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from an unknown number. "This is Josh. I know it's been a long time, but I wanted to apologize for everything that happened. You were right about Lana, and you were right about me. I hope you can forgive me someday." I showed the text to Sarah, who read it and shook her head. "Are you going to respond?" I thought about it. JD was trying to make amends, which took courage. He'd been young and stupid and had paid a price for his choices. Maybe he'd learned something from the experience. "Maybe tomorrow," I said. "Tonight is for us." I turned off the phone and put my arm around my wife. Above us, the stars were coming out, bright and clear in the cold Maine sky. Somewhere in the darkness, ships were finding their way safely to harbor, guided by lights and signals and the hard-earned wisdom of those who'd gone before. It was a good night to be home.